in the dying light of distant stars, where the cosmic winds carry the whispers of civilizations long forgotten, there existed a truth that would shake the foundations of the galaxy itself. Humanity, those strange, violent children of a death world called Terra, had done the impossible. They had survived. The year was 2387, and the Terran Colonial Federation stretched across 47 star systems like a spider's web of defiance against the void. Each world bore the scars of humanity's relentless expansion. Cities that clawed toward alien skies, orbital stations that spun like mechanical prayers, and fleets of warships that prowled the darkness between worlds with the patience of apex predators. But humanity was not alone in the cosmos. The Zethkari Imperium had ruled the galaxy for over 3 millennia. Their empire spanned 10,000 worlds, each one a testament to their philosophy of perfect order, calculated harmony, and absolute control. They were beings of ethereal beauty, tall, willowy creatures with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl and eyes that held the cold wisdom of ages. Their technology was art, their art was power, and their power was absolute until the humans arrived. Commander Daniel Cross stood on the observation deck of the TNS Retribution, watching the swirl of hyperspace through reinforced transport peel. At 34, he carried himself with the easy confidence of a man who had stared death in the face and found it wanting. His dark hair was cropped military short, his jaw bore the kind of stubble that suggested he had better things to do than shave, and his gray eyes held depths that spoke of battles won and brothers lost. The crew called him the Iron Prince, not because of any royal blood, but because he had united the scattered human colonies under a banner of defiance when the aliens came calling with their ultimatums and their pretty words about integration and enlightenment. "Sir," the voice belonged to Lieutenant Commander Alexandra Torres, his second-in-command and the closest thing to family he had left. She moved with the fluid grace of someone born in low gravity, her auburn hair pulled back in regulation style, her brown eyes sharp with intelligence. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Admiralty Command." Cross didn't turn from the viewport. Patch it through. The hologram that materialized before him showed Admiral James Harrison, a grizzled veteran whose face looked like it had been carved from granite and weathered by solar wind. Behind him, the blue-white glow of Terra's moon provided a backdrop that somehow made the old man's expression even more grim. "Daniel." Harrison's voice carried the weight of worlds. "I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. 3 days ago, our deep space reconnaissance drones detected something significant." Cross finally turned, his full attention now focused on the flickering image. "How significant?" "The Zethkari are mobilizing their core fleet. Not the frontier squadrons, not the patrol groups. The core fleet. Every intelligence asset we have is screaming the same thing. They're preparing for total war." The words hung in the recycled air like a death sentence. The core fleet was legend. A force so massive, so technologically superior, that it had never been fully deployed in living memory. Planets surrendered at the mere whisper of its approach. "There's more," Harrison continued, and somehow his expression grew even darker. "Our xenoanthropology teams believe they've finally decided what to do about us. The Zethkari Council has issued what they call a cleansing mandate. They're not interested in integration anymore, Daniel. They want us extinct." Torres sucked in a sharp breath, but Cross remained perfectly still. In the depths of hyperspace, the Retribution hummed with barely contained power, its quantum drive singing a song of defiance that seemed to echo his thoughts. "What are my orders, sir?" Harrison smiled, and it was the kind of smile that belonged on the face of a predator. "You're being deployed to the Arcturus Nebula. Our scouts have identified a target of opportunity, a Zethkari diplomatic vessel carrying someone very important. I'm transmitting the mission parameters now, but the gist is simple. You're going hunting." The hologram flickered and died, leaving Cross alone with his thoughts and the endless dance of hyperspace. Torres stepped closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "A diplomatic vessel. Danny, if we attack a diplomatic mission, they declared a war of extinction." "Alex." Cross's voice was quiet, but it carried the finality of a closing airlock. "Diplomacy died with that declaration. Now we do what humans do best, which is..." He turned back to the viewport, and for a moment the swirling energies of hyperspace seemed to reflect in his eyes like captured starlight. We survive. 600 light-years away, in the crystal spires of the Zathkari homeworld Veltar, another figure stood before a viewport. But where Cross gazed upon the chaos of hyperspace, Empress Sethkar observed the perfect order of her capital world with eyes that held the accumulated wisdom of 4 centuries. She was beautiful in the way that all Zethkari were beautiful, tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light and hair that flowed like liquid silver. But there was something different about her, something that set her apart from her kind. Where other Zethkari moved with serene confidence, she carried herself with the coiled tension of a predator. Where their eyes held cool wisdom, hers burned with an intensity that was almost human. Majesty. The voice belonged to High Counselor Nethys, the eldest member of the council and her most trusted advisor. He approached with the measured steps of one who had served the throne for over a millennium, his ancient features bearing the weight of countless decisions. "The fleet is ready," Sithara said without turning. Below her the city of Veltar stretched toward the horizon like a living constellation, its bioluminescent towers pulsing with the rhythm of 10 billion lives. Our finest ships, our most experienced commanders, our most loyal crews, all prepared to carry out the will of the Council. Indeed, Majesty. The humans will not survive the coming storm. Finally, she turned. At 412 years old, Sithara was considered young by Zethkari standards, but her violet eyes held depths that seemed far older than her years. "Tell me, Nethys, what do you know of death worlds?" The old counselor's expression flickered with surprise. "Majesty, Terra, the human homeworld. Our xenobiologists classify it as a Class 12 death world, a planet so hostile, so violent, so utterly inimical to life that by all rights nothing should have evolved there beyond the simplest microorganisms. Yet somehow, in defiance of every law of evolutionary biology, it produced them." She moved to her desk. A masterwork of grown crystal that seemed to flow like frozen water and activated a holographic display. The image that appeared was of Terra itself, blue oceans swirling with massive storm systems, continents scarred by volcanic chains, polar ice caps that advanced and retreated in cycles of devastating change. "Look at it, Nethys. A world that has experienced 5 mass extinctions. A world where the very air was once poison, where the climate swings between ice ages and greenhouse periods with terrifying regularity, where earthquakes split continents and volcanoes blot out the sun. And yet, from this crucible of death and chaos, they emerged." The counselor studied the display with the detached interest of a scholar examining a particularly virulent strain of bacteria. "Indeed, Majesty. But what is your point?" Sithara's smile was sharp enough to cut starlight. "My point, old friend, is that we are about to declare war on a species that evolved in hell. While our ancestors were learning to harness the songs of crystal and the dance of light, theirs were learning to kill everything that moved and most things that didn't. Surely you do not doubt the superiority of Zethkari technology. Our ships are works of art. Our weapons are beautiful? Yes. Elegant. Efficient." She waved her hand and the hologram changed, showing a human warship, blocky, ugly, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. "But tell me, counselor, which would you rather trust your life to in battle? A masterpiece of crystal and light, or something built by creatures who learned warfare by surviving their own planet?" Nethys was silent for a long moment. Finally he spoke, his voice carefully neutral. "The Council has made its decision, Majesty. The cleansing mandate has been issued." "Yes, it has." Sithara turned back to the viewport, her reflection ghost-like in the crystal. "And I will carry it out because I am the Empress and it is my duty. But I will not pretend it will be easy, and I will not underestimate them." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried an odd note that Nethys had never heard before, something that might have been anticipation, or perhaps respect. "They call themselves Deathworlders. You know, they wear the name like a badge of honor. And perhaps, before this is over, we will understand why." The Retribution dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Arcturus Nebula like a shark emerging from dark water. Around them the nebula stretched in all directions, a vast cloud of ionized gas and stellar debris that painted space in shades of crimson and gold. It was beautiful, in the way that all dangerous things were beautiful. Contact bearing 047 Mark 18, reported Ensign Liu from the sensor station. HFY configuration, diplomatic IFF transponder active. Cross studied the tactical display, watching the elegant curves of the alien vessel as it moved through the nebula's embrace. The ship was a work of art, all flowing lines and integrated curves, its hull seeming to shift between silver and deep blue as it caught the light of nearby stars. It was beautiful. It was also completely defenseless. "Sir," Torres said quietly, "are we really going to fire on an unarmed diplomatic vessel?" Cross was silent for a long moment, his gray eyes fixed on the alien ship. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. 3 days ago, they issued a cleansing mandate against our entire species. Not conquest, Alex, not subjugation. Extinction. He turned to face her, and she saw something in his expression that made her step back involuntarily. How many humans live in the frontier colonies? Children, families, people who've never fired a shot in anger? 200 million, sir. 200 million souls they've marked for death. Tell me, Lieutenant Commander, what exactly do we owe their diplomats? Torres was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of acceptance. Nothing, sir. We owe them nothing. Cross nodded and turned to the weapons officer. Mr. Kane, warm up the particle cannons. Full spread. Aye, sir. Weapons hot. The Retribution began to close the distance, her engines singing a low harmonic that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull. On the tactical display, the HFY vessel continued its graceful movement through the nebula, unaware that death was approaching on silent wings. Range, 12,000 kilometers and closing, Kane reported. We have a clean firing solution. Cross opened his mouth to give the order that would begin humanity's war against the galaxy. And on the long-range sensors, a new contact had appeared. Sir, Liu's voice was tight with sudden tension. I'm reading massive displacement signatures throughout the nebula. Count is... Oh, God. Sir, I'm reading over 300 ships. HFY configuration. All of them. And they're big. Torres moved to the sensor station, her face paling as she studied the readings. Danny, these aren't patrol ships or escorts. These are dreadnoughts. Carriers. Some of them are the size of space stations. Cross felt ice water flooding his veins as the truth became clear. This wasn't a diplomatic mission they'd stumbled upon. It was the vanguard of the core fleet. The trap had been perfectly laid and humanity had walked right into it. Sir, Kane said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were facing. Orders? Before Cross could respond, the communications board lit up with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared on the main screen was hauntingly beautiful, pale skin that seemed to glow with its own light, silver hair that moved as if underwater, and violet eyes that held depths beyond human comprehension. When Empress Sithara spoke, her voice carried the musical quality that all HFY possessed. But underneath the melody was something else, something that sounded almost like respect. I am Sithara, Empress of the HFY Imperium and voice of the Eternal Council. You are Commander Daniel Cross of the Terran vessel Retribution, also known among your people as the Iron Prince. Her smile was sharp and predatory. We need to talk. Cross felt the weight of 300 alien warships pressing down on him like a physical thing, but his voice remained steady. I'm listening. Good. In 1 standard hour, you will transport yourself aboard my flagship. Come alone, come unarmed, and come prepared to hear an offer that will change the fate of your species. And if I refuse, her smile widened, revealing teeth that were just a little too sharp, then your ship will be destroyed in approximately 37 seconds, and this war will begin in earnest. The choice, as you humans say, is yours. The transmission ended, leaving Cross staring at a blank screen while around him. The Retribution hummed with barely contained tension. In the vast darkness of the Arcturus Nebula, hundreds of alien warships waited with predator patience for his decision. Torres moved closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. It's a trap. Cross smiled. and for the first time in days, it reached his eyes. Of course it is. But you know what, Alex? I'm curious to see what the Queen of the Galaxy wants with a Death Worlder. He stood, straightening his uniform with hands that didn't tremble despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. You have the con. If I'm not back in 6 hours, run like hell. I know, Torres nodded, her brown eyes bright with unshed tears. Try not to start a war, Danny. Cross paused at the entrance to the shuttle bay, looking back at the bridge that had been his home for the last 3 years. When he spoke, his voice carried the finality of a closing airlock. I think it's already started. The shuttle bay of the Zathakari flagship Villanath was a cathedral of living crystal and flowing light. As Cross stepped from his transport, he found himself surrounded by architecture that seemed to breathe, walls that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and a ceiling that arched impossibly high above his head like the ribcage of some cosmic leviathan. He was not alone. Honor guard of 12 Zathkari warriors flanked his path, each one standing over 7 feet tall and clad in armor that seemed to be grown rather than forged. Their weapons were works of art, crystalline constructs that hummed with barely contained energy, but Cross could see the deadly intent in their movements. These were not ceremonial guards. They were killers, plain and simple. At the far end of the bay, a figure waited. Empress Suthathara stood in a pool of soft light, and Cross felt his breath catch despite himself. In person, she was even more striking than her holographic image had suggested. She wore robes that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, flowing garments that shifted between silver and deep purple with each movement. Her silver hair was bound in an intricate arrangement that left her elegant neck exposed, and when she smiled, Cross understood why her people had conquered the galaxy. She was absolutely terrifying. "Commander Cross," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones. "Welcome aboard my flagship. I trust your journey was uneventful." Cross stopped precisely 6 feet away from her, close enough to show he wasn't intimidated, far enough to react if this went badly. "Your Majesty, thank you for the invitation." Her smile widened, and he noticed again how her teeth were just slightly too sharp for comfort. "How wonderfully civilized. Tell me, Commander, what do you see when you look around this chamber?" Cross sees his eyes sweep the vast space, taking in the organic curves, the living walls, the way light seemed to flow through the very structure like blood through veins. "I see the workshop of a species that learned to make war into art." "Indeed. And what do you think I see when I look upon your vessel?" He considered the question carefully. The Retribution was everything this place was not: angular, armored, brutal in its efficiency. Probably the workshop of a species that learned to make art into war. Sithara laughed, and the sound was like crystal chimes in a solar wind. "Oh, you are delicious. No wonder they call you the Iron Prince. Come, walk with me. We have much to discuss." She turned and began moving deeper into the ship, her guards falling into formation around them. Cross followed, his mind cataloging everything he saw: the crew members who moved with liquid grace, the technology that seemed more grown than built, the subtle but unmistakable signs of a civilization that had never known defeat. "Tell me about Terra," Sithara said as they walked through corridors that pulsed with soft light. "What was it like, growing up on a death world?" The question caught him off guard. "You've read the xenobiological reports, I'm sure." "Oh yes. Fascinating reading. But I want to hear it from you. What does it feel like to come from a place where everything is trying to kill you?" Cross was quiet for a moment, his thoughts turning to memories he rarely allowed himself to revisit. "You learn to be careful, to always be watching, always be ready. On Terra, the weather can kill you, the animals can kill you, the plants can kill you, sometimes even the ground beneath your feet can kill you. So you adapt. And how does one adapt to a world of constant death? You learn that survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest." He paused as they entered what appeared to be an observation deck, the walls transparent and offering a view of the nebula beyond. "You learn that it's about being the most stubborn." Sithara moved to the viewport, her reflection ghost-like in the crystal. Around them, the Zathkari fleet stretched in all directions like a constellation of predators, each ship a masterwork of deadly beauty. "Your species fascinates me, Commander. In all our millennia of expansion, we have encountered thousands of intelligent species. Some were more advanced than us when we first met, though not for long. Others were more numerous, more resource-rich, more strategically positioned. But never in all our history have we encountered a species quite like yours. What makes us different? She turned to face him, and in the nebula's crimson light, her violet eyes seemed to glow with their own fire. You refused to surrender, not to us, not to logic, not to overwhelming odds. Even now, facing the combined might of the core fleet, you came aboard my ship alone and unarmed, simply because I asked. That is either incredible courage or complete insanity. Maybe it's both. Yes, she whispered, and something in her voice made Cross step closer. Perhaps it is. Do you know what the Council has decided regarding humanity? I know about the cleansing mandate. The cleansing mandate. She spoke the words like they left a bitter taste in her mouth. Such a sterile phrase for genocide. But yes, that is their decision. Every human world, every human ship, every human life, all to be extinguished. Cross felt anger rising in his chest like a tide of molten metal, but he kept his voice level. And what does the Empress think of the Council's decision? Sephitarah was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on something beyond the viewport. When she spoke, her words sent ice through Cross's veins. I think the Council is afraid. Afraid? Of us? She laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Oh, Commander, you have no idea, do you, what your species has accomplished in just 3 centuries of spaceflight? She gestured toward the viewport where human and alien ships faced each other across the void. When we first achieved faster-than-light travel, it took us 800 years to colonize 50 worlds. You accomplished the same in less than 2 centuries. We had 50L theory to build on. Theory you stole from the wreckage of a hegemony survey ship. Yes, but theory means nothing without the will to use it. Do you know what our projections show if your expansion continues unchecked? Cross shook his head. In 500 years you will outnumber us 10 to 1. In 1,000 years the galaxy will be more human than Zethkari. Her smile was sharp as a blade. That is why the Council is afraid, Commander. Not of what you are now, but of what you will become. The words hung between them like an undetonated warhead. Finally, Cross found his voice. What do you want from me? I want to make you an offer. A bargain, if you will. I'm listening. The Sitsara moved closer. Close enough that he could smell the strange electric scent of her skin. The Council has given me command of the core fleet and orders to carry out the cleansing mandate. But they have also given me discretion in how to proceed. Meaning? Meaning that I could choose to be merciful. Your people value honor, do they not? Trial by combat? Single combat to determine the fate of armies? Cross felt his heart begin to race as he began to understand what she was suggesting. You're proposing a duel? I am proposing a hunt. Her eyes glittered with anticipation. You and I, alone on a world of my choosing. No weapons save what we can make or find. No support, no rescue, no quarter given. The survivor's species inherits the galaxy. The magnitude of what she was suggesting hit him like a physical blow. You would risk the fate of your entire empire on single combat. Would you not risk the fate of humanity on the same? Cross stared at her, this alien empress who held the power to exterminate his species with a word, and realized she was serious. Completely, utterly serious. Why? He asked. Why would you make such an offer? For the first time since he'd met her, Sithara's composure cracked. She turned away from him, her hands clasped behind her back, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I have spent 4 centuries watching my people grow soft. We have not faced a true challenge in over 2,000 years, Commander. We conquer through superior technology and overwhelming numbers, but we no longer remember what it means to fight for survival. We have forgotten the songs of war, the dance of death, the pure joy of facing an enemy who might actually kill us. She turned back to face him, and Cross saw something in her eyes that sent chills down his spine. Not hatred, not contempt, but something far more dangerous. Hunger. You are Deathworlders, she continued. Children of violence, born from a crucible that would have destroyed any other species. And I I want to know what that feels like. I want to face an enemy who will not surrender, who will not break, who will fight me until one of us is dead." Cross stared at her, understanding beginning to dawn. "You're not just the Empress of the Zethkari. You're a warrior who's never had a real war to fight, just as you are a general who has never had a worthy enemy to face." The two predators faced each other across the observation deck while around them, the fleet of the galaxy's greatest empire waited for orders that would decide the fate of two species. "If I accept," Cross said slowly, "and if I lose, humanity dies. And if I win, the cleansing mandate is rescinded. Your species lives, expands, thrives. The galaxy becomes large enough for both our kinds." Cross closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 200 million human lives pressing down on him like a physical thing. When he opened them again, Cythera was watching him with the intensity of a hawk studying its prey. "There is one more thing," she said. "One condition I must impose, which is—" her smile was beautiful and terrible and utterly without mercy. "The hunt will take place on a world of my choosing, a place where I will have certain advantages." Cross thought about Torres, waiting aboard the Retribution for word that would never come. He thought about the children in the frontier colonies, playing games of war without understanding that real war was about to find them. He thought about Admiral Harrison and the desperate hope in the old man's eyes as he'd sent Cross on this mission. He thought about what it meant to be human. "I accept." Cythera's laughter rang like crystal bells in the vast chamber, beautiful and deadly and filled with anticipation. "Excellent. We depart for Kythera Prime in 1 hour. Kythera Prime, my homeworld's primary moon." Her eyes glittered with predatory joy. "A place where the very air is poisoned to non-Zethkari physiology, where the gravity is 3 times Terra standard, and where the wildlife considers anything that moves to be potential prey." Cross felt ice water in his veins as the full scope of her trap became clear. She wasn't just challenging him to single combat. She was challenging him to survive on a world specifically designed to kill him. "Naturally," he said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he'd just agreed to. "Oh, Commander," Cythera purred, moving close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her alien skin. "This is going to be such fun." As if summoned by her words, the honor guard stepped forward, their crystalline weapons humming with lethal energy. Cross realized that regardless of the outcome of their hunt, he was never leaving this ship alive unless he proved worthy of the challenge. The game had begun. The surface of Kythera Prime was a nightmare of crystalline forests and acid rain, where the very ground pulsed with bioluminescent veins and the air shimmered with toxins that would kill a human in minutes. Cross materialized on the transport pad wearing a breathing mask and environmental suit. His only concessions to survival on a world that wanted him dead. Across from him, Cythera stood unprotected in the poisonous atmosphere, her skin seeming to glow brighter as it absorbed the harmful radiation. She wore simple hunting leathers now, all pretense of imperial dignity discarded in favor of practical mobility. In her hands she carried nothing more than a crystalline blade that hummed with barely contained energy. "The rules are simple," she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the howling wind. "We hunt each other until one of us dies. No quarter, no mercy, no surrender. The survivor's species inherits the galaxy." Cross adjusted his breathing apparatus and checked the seals on his suit. "How long do I have before this thing fails?" "Your atmospheric recycler? Perhaps 6 hours if you're careful with your oxygen consumption." Her smile was sharp as starlight. "Of course you could always remove the mask and breathe freely, for about 30 seconds. Generous of you. I am nothing if not sporting." She raised her blade in what might have been a salute. "You have 1 hour head start, Commander. Use it wisely." Cross looked around at the alien landscape. Crystalline trees that sang in harmonics too low for human ears, pools of luminescent liquid that might have been water or acid, and in the distance the shapes of things that moved with predatory purpose through the toxic mist. "See you soon, Your Majesty." "Indeed you will." Cross turned and ran into the crystal forest, his boots pounding against ground that felt like living bone. Behind him, Empress Cythera began counting down the minutes until the hunt began in earnest. In the poisonous paradise of Kythera Prime, Two apex predators prepared to discover which of their species truly deserved to inherit the stars. The air recycler on Cross's suit hummed quietly, marking time with mechanical precision. 5 hours and 53 minutes until system failure. 5 hours and 53 minutes to kill a goddess, or die trying. The hunt was on. Cross moved through the crystalline forest like a ghost, every sense hyper-tuned to the alien landscape around him. The trees sang their subsonic songs, creating a harmony that seemed to vibrate through his bones, while overhead Kythera Prime's 3 moons cast everything in a shifting spectrum of silver, blue, and deep crimson light. His suit's display showed 4 hours and 17 minutes of air remaining. Somewhere behind him, moving with the patience of a born predator, Cythera was closing the distance. He had spent the first 2 hours learning the rhythms of this world, which pools were acid and which were merely toxic, which creatures fled from movement and which were drawn to it, how the gravity affected his normally precise movements. The environmental suit felt clumsy and restrictive, but without it he would be dead in moments. A sound reached his ears through the suit's audio pickups, crystal chimes dancing on poisonous wind. She was singing, he realized. The Empress of the Galaxy was hunting him to the accompaniment of her own voice, and the sound was hauntingly beautiful. Cross pressed himself against the trunk of a resonating tree and activated his suit's passive sensors. The display painted the forest around him in false colors, showing heat signatures and movement patterns in the toxic mist. There, 200 meters to his northeast, moving with fluid grace between the crystal formations, Cythera was taking her time, savoring the hunt, confident in her advantages. She knew this world, breathed its poison air as if it were spring water, and possessed reflexes honed by 4 centuries of existence. But Cross had something she didn't expect. He had grown up in hell. The trap he set was simplicity itself. A deadfall using one of the smaller crystal formations, triggered by a pressure plate fashioned from his suit's emergency repair kit. It wouldn't kill her, but it might slow her down long enough for him to get close. He settled into position 30 meters away and waited. The singing grew closer, Cythera's voice weaving through the crystalline harmonics like a thread of pure melody. When she finally appeared, Cross felt his breath catch despite everything. She moved through the alien landscape like she belonged there, her pale skin glowing with absorbed radiation, her silver hair flowing behind her like liquid starlight. She was magnificent. She was also walking directly toward his trap. The deadfall triggered perfectly. Tons of living crystal crashing down in a cascade of light and sound. But in the split second before impact, Cythera moved with inhuman speed, rolling aside and coming up in a combat crouch with her blade already in hand. Her laughter rang through the forest like broken music. "Oh, very good, Commander. For a moment there, I thought you might actually be boring." Cross stepped out from cover, pulling his own weapon, a makeshift spear crafted from a broken crystal shard and his suit's emergency beacon. Disappointing? On the contrary, delightfully inventive. She began to circle him, her movements fluid and hypnotic. "Tell me, do all Deathworlders fight with such creativity?" "Only the ones who want to live." "Ah, but do you want to live, Daniel Cross?" She used his first name like a caress, and somehow that was more unsettling than any threat. "Or do you simply refuse to die?" The distinction was subtle but important, and they both knew it. Cross kept his weapon ready, tracking her movement while his suit's display counted down the minutes. 3 hours, 41 minutes, 57 seconds. "Why don't you come a little closer and find out?" Cythera's attack came without warning, her blade singing through the toxic air in an arc designed to separate his head from his shoulders. Cross barely managed to get his spear up in time, the crystal weapons meeting in a shower of sparks and harmonic resonance. She was fast, faster than anything human had a right to be. But speed wasn't everything. Cross gave ground, letting her drive him back while he learned the patterns of her attacks. She fought like a dancer, all flowing motion and deadly grace, but there was something almost ceremonial about her technique. This was how Zathkari warriors had fought for millennia. Beautiful, elegant, and utterly devastating against opponents who shared their aesthetic sense of combat. Unfortunately for her, humans had learned warfare in a different school. Cross's counterattack came in the middle of one of her elaborate combinations. A simple thrust aimed not at where she was but where she would be. The crystal point of his spear grazed her ribs, drawing a line of silver blood that glowed in the moonlight. Cythera hissed and leaped back, one hand pressed to her wounded side. For a moment her perfect composure cracked and Cross saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. Joy. Pure, unadulterated joy. First blood to the Deathworlder, she purred, examining the silver stain on her fingers. When was the last time someone made me bleed? I wonder. 50 years? A century? Cross kept his weapon ready, watching for the next attack. Lonely at the top? You have no idea. Her smile was sharp enough to cut light. Do you know what it's like to be the apex predator of an entire galaxy? To know that nothing you face will ever truly challenge you, truly threaten you, truly make you feel alive. She began to circle him again. But there was something different in her movement now. Less ceremony, more intent. For 400 years I have ruled through strength, but never once have I had to fight for my life. Do you understand what you've given me, Commander? The truth hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't about saving her empire or proving Zethkuri's superiority. This wasn't even about genocide or conquest or the fate of two species. This was about a goddess who had forgotten what it felt like to be mortal. You're insane, he whispered. Perhaps, or perhaps I'm the only sane creature left in a galaxy gone soft with peace. Her blade caught the light of the 3 moons, creating prisms of deadly beauty. Show me more, Daniel Cross. Show me what it means to be human. Her next attack was a whirlwind of crystal and light, her blade moving in patterns too fast for human eyes to follow. Cross fought with desperate efficiency, his spear work crude but effective, trading elegance for survival at every exchange. They battled through the crystal forest, their weapons painting trails of light through the toxic mist. Cythera was stronger, faster, more skilled. But Cross was stubborn in the way that only Deathworlders could be stubborn. Every time she pressed an advantage, he found a way to deny her. Every time she expected him to break, he bent instead. His air supply read 2 hours and 18 minutes. They fought across a clearing where pools of acid bubbled and steamed. The ground itself a maze of death traps. Cythera moved like she was dancing, her feet finding safe purchase with impossible grace, while Cross stumbled and adapted and somehow managed to keep pace. His spear shattered against her blade in a shower of crystal fragments, leaving him armed with nothing but a jagged shard that barely qualified as a knife. But when she moved in for the killing blow, he did something no Zathakari warrior would ever expect. He tackled her. They went down in a tangle of limbs and fury, rolling across the poisonous ground while toxic mist swirled around them. Cross's suit registered multiple breaches, emergency seals activating as the atmosphere tried to kill him from a dozen different angles. But he had her pinned, his makeshift knife pressed against her throat hard enough to draw another line of silver blood. Yield, he gasped, his breathing ragged inside the damaged mask. Cythera looked up at him, her violet eyes bright with something that might have been ecstasy. Never. Her counterattack lifted him off the ground and sent him flying into the trunk of a resonating tree. Cross hit hard enough to see stars, his damaged suit sparking and smoking as systems failed one by one. When his vision cleared, Cythera was standing over him, her crystal blade poised for the killing strike. She was bleeding from a dozen small wounds, her perfect hair disheveled, her hunting leathers torn and stained with silver blood and acid burn. She had never looked more beautiful. You fought magnificently, she said, and there was genuine respect in her voice. Your species should be proud. Cross looked at his suit's display. 47 minutes of air remaining, multiple system failures, environmental breach in progress. He was dying by degrees and they both knew it. The bargain, he managed to say. If I die, my people will live, she finished. I gave you my word, Commander. Humanity will be spared, even though you won. Cythera's laugh was like crystal bells in a funeral wind. Won. Oh, my dear Deathworlder. You still don't understand, do you? She knelt beside him, her blade still ready but no longer poised to strike. I told you the rules of our hunt. We fight until one of us dies, and the survivor's species inherits the galaxy. But I never said I had to be the one to kill you. Cross felt ice in his veins as understanding dawned. The poison, the atmosphere, We'll claim you in less than an hour. Yes. But here's the thing about goddesses, Daniel Cross. We make our own rules. She reached up and, to his amazement, began removing pieces of her own clothing. The hunting leathers came away in strips, revealing pale skin that glowed with its own inner light. What are you doing? Something no Zathakari has ever done in 4,000 years of recorded history. She smiled, and it was beautiful and terrible and utterly without precedent. I am choosing to lose. With quick, efficient movements, she began fashioning the leather strips into a crude but functional breathing apparatus. Her fingers moved with the skill of someone who had spent centuries mastering the art of survival, adapting her clothing into something that might keep him alive long enough to reach his transport coordinates. I don't understand. Of course you don't. You're thinking like a human: survival, victory, the continuation of your species. But I'm thinking like a goddess who has finally found something worth dying for. She finished her work and pressed the improvised breathing mask into his hands. It was crude, patched together from alien materials and desperate hope, but it might give him another hour or two of life. You see, Commander, I didn't come here to win. I came here to lose. To finally, after 4 centuries of existence, find an opponent worthy of claiming my life. Cross stared at her, this alien empress, who held the fate of humanity in her hands, and realized she was completely, utterly serious. You're giving me your life to save my people. I'm giving you my life because you showed me what it means to be mortal again. She stood, her crystal blade catching the light of the 3 moons. But the terms of our bargain still stand. One of us must die and the survivor's species inherits the galaxy. Understanding finally dawned. You want me to kill you. I want you to prove that humanity deserves to survive, that Deathworlders are worthy of the stars. Her smile was sharp as winter's starlight. Fight me, Daniel Cross. Kill me. Earn your people's freedom. Cross looked at the improvised breathing apparatus in his hands, then at the goddess standing before him with a blade that could end his life with a single stroke. His suit's display showed 31 minutes of air remaining. He stood, his movements careful and deliberate, and picked up a shard of crystal that had broken from his shattered spear. It was barely 6 inches long, more fragment than weapon. But it would have to do. I won't make it easy for you, he said. I would be disappointed if you did. They faced each other in the clearing where pools of acid bubbled and toxic mist swirled like the breath of sleeping dragons. The Empress of the Galaxy and the Deathworlder who refused to die, 2 apex predators locked in a dance that would decide the fate of 2 species. When Sithatara attacked, it was with the desperate fury of someone who had finally found something worth dying for. When Cross defended, it was with the stubborn determination of someone who had something worth living for. They fought as the moons wheeled overhead and the poisonous air ate away at Cross's improvised breathing apparatus. They fought as his suit's systems failed. One by one, and toxic mist burned his exposed skin. They fought as minutes ticked away toward a deadline that would claim him whether he won or lost. And in the end, when Sithara's blade finally found its mark and silver blood flowed like starlight in the alien night, it was she who fell to her knees with a crystal fragment buried in her heart. Perfect, she whispered, her violet eyes bright with satisfaction as life faded from them. Absolutely perfect. Cross knelt beside her as her breathing slowed, his own air supply down to single digits. Why? He asked. Why give up everything for us? Sithara's smile was peaceful. All the predatory hunger finally faded from her features. Because someone needed to remind the galaxy what warriors look like. And because she paused, her voice growing fainter with each word. Because I think I finally understand what your people mean when they talk about honor. Her eyes closed, and the Empress of the Galaxy died with a smile on her lips. Cross activated his emergency beacon with hands that shook from more than just oxygen deprivation. As the signal raced through hyperspace toward the Retribution, he looked down at the body of the being who had held the power to exterminate humanity and chose instead to save it. Thank you, he whispered to the alien knight. High above, the Zathakari fleet waited for orders that would never come. Without their empress, without the driving force of her will, the cleansing mandate would die with her. The galaxy was large enough for 2 species of predators after all. By the time Torres and the rescue team found him, Cross was barely conscious, his improvised breathing apparatus finally failing as Kythera Prime's poison atmosphere tried to claim its final victim. But he was alive, and that was enough. It was always enough for a Deathworlder. 6 months later, Commander Daniel Cross stood on the bridge of the Retribution as it approached Terra for the first time in 3 years. Below them, the blue marble of humanity's homeworld turned slowly against the star-filled darkness, beautiful and terrible and utterly indomitable. Signal from Admiralty Command, Torres reported from her station. They're requesting immediate debrief on the Arcturus incident. Tell them I'll be happy to discuss it over dinner. I have some stories to tell that they won't believe. Torres smiled, the expression reaching her eyes for the first time since his return. Any regrets, Dan? Cross thought about Sithara, about the goddess who had chosen mortality over immortality, honor over victory, about the alien empress who had given humanity a future by sacrificing her own. In the months since her death, the Zethikari Imperium had fragmented into a dozen competing factions, their grand unity shattered by the loss of their immortal ruler. Some sought peace with humanity, others still dreamed of conquest, but none possessed the unified will necessary to carry out genocide on a galactic scale. The humans, meanwhile, had done what humans always did in the face of adversity. They had survived, they had adapted, they had thrived. No regrets, Cross said finally. We are what we are, Alex, Deathworlders, children of violence and chaos and the stubborn refusal to surrender. The galaxy is going to have to learn to live with that. Outside the viewport, Terra's city sparkled like captured starlight, each gleam a testament to humanity's endless capacity for hope in the face of darkness. Somewhere among those lights, children were being born who would never know how close they had come to extinction. They would grow up free to dream of the stars, to reach for worlds beyond his imagination, to carry the torch of human determination to the farthest corners of the galaxy. And perhaps someday they would meet other species who had learned the hard truth that the Zethkari had discovered too late, that in the vast darkness between the stars, there was room for more than one kind of predator. The Iron Prince smiled and watched his homeworld turn beneath the eternal stars, content in the knowledge that humanity's greatest battles still lay ahead. After all, they were Deathworlders. They wouldn't have it any other way.